and welcome to Biddle on Saturday, February 23rd, 2019. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing good.
Yeah, good evening all.
Doing good.
Can we get a sound check from the chat just to make sure? So, this week we are trying out a distro that I don't know. We'll have to talk about it, but it seems like it might be the shortest distro we've talked about. But Zeb has some updates on that, literally updates. So we've been checking out Mageia, and you can find the download or find out what we're talking about at mageia.org. And I will place a link in the chat for that. But it is a fork of Mandriva that started in 2010. So, Zeb, what do you think of Mageia?
Well, it started out as probably one of the shortest nexts that was ever going to come to the channel.
That's what I thought.
I loaded up the ISO and did the, oh, look, there's an NVIDIA install. This is going to be great. So I did the NVIDIA install, and 45 minutes later, it's still sitting there in the background saying I'm churning out NVIDIA. So I thought, okay, reboot. Tried the other one, got into it, and then 2 minutes into it, it froze. So I thought, oh, well, this is new. Let's try it again. Rebooted, did another reboot, and 2 minutes later, it refroze. So on that, literally on that Sunday, it was like, okay, I've done with this next. And then this morning when I got up, I noticed that there was a brand new beta. So they've got a beta 2 out, and I'm actually using it, and it's installed now. Everything is working, excuse me, as it should do. I had a little bit of messing around to get Steam installed, but thanks to Dolphin, he made me to go back and check myself and made sure I had all of the 32-bit repos installed. And although I had the core installed, I didn't have update installed, which was quite strange. And as soon as I ticked that box, Steam come up and it works fantastic. And then we get on to OBS and NVIDIA and encoding, and I thought, oh, here we go again. I couldn't get it. And then, lo and behold, in the Telegram chat, up pops Mr. Popey. Hey, guys, I've got a new OBS extra. Give it a whirl. So I then spend about an hour and a half trying to get snaps installed on Mageia, and it's just not having it. So I thought, oh, no, what? I'll try Flatpak. Yay, got it. It's worked. Oh, no, here we go. I've got the Rocco syndrome. It opens up, and you get this window, then a window, then a window, it's like when you're streaming live and you're watching yourself back, only you've not gone live yet. So there's a window and a window and a window and a window and a window, and it just won't redraw itself properly. Everything works. You just can't see what's coming out of the stream. So, unfortunately, it will end up as being, unless I can get OBS working properly, or unless I can work out how to get the snaps installed, it will end up being a next. But it's a KDE distribution. Everything works as it should do. It should do. I'm back to my weird 3-screen setup, and KDE seems to be the only one that remembers I've scaled the middle monitor, and everything else is as snappy and as quick as it would be if I was running Ubuntu. So once you get used to the strange RPM, and then you realize you can actually use Fedora RPMs most of the time, it's okay. It's working. It's good. So thank goodness they brought out the beta 2.
So can we go back to the whole Rocco syndrome? What exactly is that?
OBS just doesn't open up properly. Everything works. You can see absolutely everything you need to see, but it starts off with a small window in the left-hand corner. You try and drag the size of the whole OBS window, and then all you end up is that window repeated, and the screen just doesn't redraw itself. So it's just, I called it the Rocco syndrome because it happens to you quite often on OBS.
I know it well.
So it gets a tentative thumbs up for me, and if I can get OBS working properly, then yeah, it will get a thumbs up.
Yeah, I think most of us missed that whole update 2 thing. All right, Peter.
No sound, Peter.
No sound, Peter. All right, Michael.
Right. I did not get a whole lot of time with it. I was trying to install it in the VM. I did end up using the beta 2. I ran the guest add-ons with the auto run first. Oh, and let me back up for a second. The install, some very unique options in there. I know at one point it just randomly has password. Doesn't say what the password's for. You haven't entered a username at that point, but it just has password. I'm assuming that's a password on the grub, but I have no idea what that was actually used for. I'm getting a nod from Dolphin there down there, so I'm guessing that's what it is. So I guess that's what it was. Skip that, but just some strange things, and then you don't actually create the user account until you reboot. That was just a bit odd to me.
Yep.
The other thing that was really just kind of strange, I did the auto install for the first time, and it would not let me log back in. I don't know what was going on. It would not capture my mouse and keyboard. I don't know if that was just VirtualBox or what was going on. So I did one more install and I got it reinstalled. And I could not get, and then I realized sudo is not installed by default. So you have to su and all that. So just a bit of an adjustment. But I mean, I didn't really get enough of it really to fully comprehend one way or another whether it would be something that would ultimately work for me or not. I thought it looked pretty solid. Like, I liked the overall look of things. I was interested in seeing further on it, but just ran out of time.
Cool. Peter, you get your sound working?
Is it working now?
It is.
Mhm.
Okay, good. I'm glad to be here. Because of life events, I almost wasn't today. My wife arrived home safely from a trip, and she's crashed out in a bed asleep right now. Also, James, close your ears, because I borked Solus today.
Oh.
Oh no.
until about half an hour ago, when I got it fixed. It was a whole grab kernel thing, so I'm glad. I still have my Chromebook. I could have used that. Anyway, Mageia. I did install it last week, and it worked. It installed fine initially, but I had a problem where I couldn't connect to the internet during the install, either via Wi-Fi or via Ethernet. And so when it installed, there was no repositories at all, only the local files, and it wouldn't update. I had to actually go find out how to add repositories. So a little bit odd there. And I've unfortunately not been able to go back to it. I got it working, but I've not been back to it.
Okay. Well, but correct. But you said you didn't have any major problems on the install?
Apart from not having any internet at all, but once I rebooted after the install, there was internet, and I had to go manually add the repositories.
See, the first time I went to install that, it just, well, I should say the first time I went to boot into it, I booted into the live image, and the whole system was so frozen that it would like release every 8 or 10 seconds, but it was almost like the CPU was pegged at 100%. And I would move the mouse and it would wait for probably 8 to 10 seconds before it would move to where I moved it to. And it was a constant. I let it try to settle down and sit there for a while, and it just would not happen. Now, then I went in and did the NVIDIA install, and that was a complete disaster. That sat there for probably an hour and just sat there. So after that second time, I just said, you know what? I can't. I ran out of time basically to keep trying different things to make it work. So that's good that you didn't have any problems installing it anyway.
No, it seemed fine. It seemed stable once I got to that stage. Unfortunately, life happened, and I'm not been back to it.
Yep. All right, Big Pod, did you get to try it out? Hold on, sir. You are muted. All right, go ahead.
Just got to install it and quickly check it out. I didn't really like the installer. Just didn't float my boat, and I had a hell of a lot of trouble getting the package manager working, and then I just stopped.
Okay, so it's definitely not for you.
No, definitely not. I'm more of a Manjaro Arch guy.
All right. Wendy, you had some real life issues, so I take it that you didn't have time to try it this week.
No, I spent the week doing spring cleaning early, which I'm still working on. So no tech for me this week.
It's all good. It's all good. Thomas?
Okay, so I did try Mageia, however you pronounce it. It was a very quick next for me, and I'll tell you why. So I went to install it, and the installer, it looks a little different from most distros, but it works perfectly fine. And at one point, it asked me for the password I wanted, and I set it, and it was perfectly fine. And then when it rebooted out of the live system into the actual installed system, that's when it asked me to create my user account. And I've seen that before in other distros, and it's a little bit weird, but it's not a huge deal. It just gives me some very big Windows flashbacks, especially when I have to go. And so when I was trying to log in the first time, it boots up Passgrub. You get this little terminal thing asking you to log in. I first thought, okay, my normal username. So I tried that. Didn't work. So then I tried admin because I figured that would probably be something that would work, and no. And then I tried root, and that worked, which I guess makes sense. But then I had to make my actual account, and then I logged in. So really weird, gave me Windows flashbacks, but I guess it works. I did not like the theming, but to each his own. What got me was that sudo was not installed by default. And in my eyes, if you're making a distro, you have to have sudo installed by default. If you do not have sudo installed by default, what are you doing? Arch is its own little weird thing, so it gets kind of a pass because you build the entire thing up from scratch. But this thing is not an Arch distro. This is something where it's actually already built together for you. So in my eyes, that's a very big, very quick next, especially when after I did install it, I have to go change the sudoers file. And I'm not screwing around with that because I don't want to accidentally screw it up and lock myself out of having those admin privileges. So, yeah, next.
All right. Alan, did you have a chance to try it?
No, I didn't because I was at work at an engineering sprint, so I was away from my computer that has all my VMs on it. But I'm interested in a couple of things. One, I think it's hilarious. If you don't have sudo, what are you doing? I remember when we first made Ubuntu and we had sudo by default, we got so much flack. So many people were saying, this is insecure. What are you doing? Why are you putting sudo on there by default? So it's funny to me how things change, that, the opinion now is if you're not doing sudo, you're doing it wrong. And also I'm interested to hear what Zeb said about being able to support Fedora RPMs on Mageia. I didn't know that was a thing. I guess it depends. Some work, some don't, if they're built against the same libc, similar kernel revision, that kind of thing. So that piqued my interest. So I actually will download it and have a play with it to see if some of the interesting Fedora RPMs that we've made will work on it. But other than that, no, I haven't played with it yet.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was only an experiment because I suddenly read somewhere that I could use the DNF command, and I've used Fedora quite a lot before. So I started using, sudo DNF, do this, that, and the other, and it was working. So I thought, okay, Fedora 29 repos, let's grab that RPM, whack it on there. Oh, look, it's got in. Nice. So, yeah, it was interesting, but unfortunately, I couldn't find an OBS that was working. And I really wanted to try out your OBS next. I think I'm going to have to download. Is it 1810 that doesn't include NVENC by default anymore?
Really? That's news to me. Well, I mean, whatever you install, just try that snap out.
FFmpeg isn't built with basically compiled for Ubuntu repositories with NVENC support. You have to compile it yourself. And
Was that a
because
change FFmpeg made though?
FFmpeg, and because of that also OBS don't have. I believe they actually use FFmpeg for the whole transcode and coding and stuff like that. As far as I remember, the last time I checked.
So the snap I've made has FFmpeg built a custom build of FFmpeg in it that does NVEnc and VAPI, so you can do it on NVIDIA and on Intel GPUs.
Yeah, I definitely want to try that out because I tried to actually get snaps working on Arch here, and I was having some issues with some errors and stuff like that. So I'm going to be booting.
I'd love to hear more about that another time. we can figure it out.
But I'll be booting it.
That's work for me on Arch.
And trying it out.
Cool.
All right, Barb.
I didn't try it. Somehow it just did not appeal to me. And so I said, nah, I went on their website, I looked at stuff, and they didn't really even have any screenshots that I could find. So it really kind of just left I just didn't want to try it.
Okay. Perfectly all right. I know that 50 Cents tried it, right?
I am actually installing it as we speak.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I was going to, when you guys were talking about installer, I got curious. So I was like, well, let's see what this installer is. It kind of looks like a themed Anaconda, like an old version of Anaconda. Has anyone installed RHEL recently? I do it all the time at work. So I'm watching Anaconda all the time. And this looks like it's kind of loosely based on Anaconda, an older version of Anaconda, like RHEL 6's installer, which is janky. But anyway, yeah, maybe by the end of this show it'll be ready, and I was
going to say maybe by the time we make our rounds, you'll be able to give us some info on it.
But it's way slower.
Yeah.
All right, Colin.
Yes.
Sorry, James.
Yeah, was he finished talking? Or yeah, I installed Mageia, did the updates, and then my computer was telling me that there was nothing installed on my computer. So I don't know what that was all about. I politely told my computer, yes, there is an operating system on there, and it wasn't having it, Rocco. So this happened. Everything worked all right, installed fine. It worked okay after install. It's just after the updates. Now, I tried it 2 or 3 times, sort of had enough of it and said, I think I'll move on from that one. But I didn't know there was a beta 2 out, what Zeb's talking about, so I didn't actually get around to trying that. So, yeah, it was a pretty quick one for me, to be honest.
Colin, that sounds like an error that I would have. Nothing's installed on your computer.
Yeah, Rocco, just saying you need to install something on here or whatever the error was, and, I won't use the words that I was telling the computer.
The family show, Colin.
It's there. So, yeah, it was only after the updates. It seemed to run all right. It installed okay. Just after the updates, there must have been something there. Maybe it was an NVIDIA thing. I don't know. As soon as you put NVIDIA on this laptop, it doesn't do very well. So, yeah, that was next after that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Dolphin.
Hi.
What up?
Not much. So I put Mageia, I don't know. I had to listen to tuxdigital.com to see how to pronounce it. But I put it on this guy, which is this is the middle ground of my problematic notebooks. And no 32-bit UEFI challenges, no nothing like that. I took the live XFCE one. And I must have got like the beta 2 must have came out like right as I was downloading. That's the only one I got was on the torrent. I got downloaded it the other day, but I got the beta 2, so I don't know. It was a new experience. I must admit there were some rough edges, and if those guys are listening, there's a couple of points. There's not a network manager on the panel unless you already have a network connection. Which was a little strange to me. It's running. It's there. It's just not on the panel, at least on the XFCE version. It's not on the panel until you actually connect and get a working thing. Now, I don't know if it's if you don't have – this laptop only has a Broadcom wireless that does not work with the open source drivers. This is the one hiccup to it. So it may be that it didn't see that I had a network card at all, and so it didn't put it on there. I don't know which it is, because their live system is strange. Is it lets you, when you go to connect the network, it then installs the Broadcom driver that you need, which was kind of neat, I guess. It's automatic, but it was a little odd. But I did get a connection. All my connections were listed twice. I don't know what that's about. They were all listed in the doohickey twice inside their application. Once it was in Network Manager, it was fine. But there's a hiccup with the way they do this. If you don't set up the connection on the live system and then do the install, you will never be able to set up the internet connection after the install, because they remove the ability to do that. It doesn't install those proprietary drivers. It'll say, "Oh, no, you don't have a driver, sorry, and I don't have an internet connection on this thing, so I couldn't install them." So it's kind of a catch-22. But I went back, did it again on the live, set it all up on the live, didn't have it do the updates because there were so many updates that it actually maxed out the RAM on the machine, which only has 2 gigs of RAM. It's not the greatest machine, okay? I'm fully cognizant of the fact that this was a piece of junk machine. But then I installed it first. I had the internet connection set up, installed it around. I actually liked the idea of having the user account set up after the reboot. We get used to it the other way around, but Popey knows what I'm talking about, because you guys got the OEM thing set up. If you buy a Dell or something, it's already installed. You have to set it up after it's installed. So it makes sense. And yeah, it might give Thomas Windows flashbacks, but it's actually set up for, if you actually sell a computer with this on it, it's okay. Just hand it to them. It's already set up, ready to go. You put in your username and password and you're done. That part I liked. I liked their little software center. I had some thematic issues with it. Columns would run up off the screen a little bit. You probably wouldn't see that on either the GNOME or the KDE, because I'm fairly certain it's a GTK issue with their version of XFCE. All their themes, except for Adwaita, are GTK2 only. And all their XFCE parts are GTK3, because they've got the 4.13 development edition. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. So if you guys are listening, get your themes lined out, because it's a little weird to have like 20 themes and none of them do anything except 2 Adwaita themes. Yeah, so I got Adwaita Dark on here right now, which still has some issues.
Yeah, that has some issues.
It has a few, but this one's not so bad. It's better than some older ones. See, no network manager. Let's see. Their welcome app. I don't know if it's the same welcome app on all of them or not, but the welcome app on the XFCE version has text in it that makes it look like it's paying attention to what you're doing, but it's not. It's static. The ending screen on there, even when you're still running live, tells you that you've finished your install, and even if you've never run the installer, it tells you finished the install and that you're all set up and ready to go. It does check some things. It does if you're running an internet connection. Sometimes I had an internet connection, it was still telling me I didn't have one. On my second trip through the installer, it picked it up that it had one. So I don't know if it's just me being crazy, or if it only does that if you actually run the install. I didn't check it the second time on the live. Lots of little rough spots like that. I never really used an RPM-based distribution before, so I was kind of excited to try this one.
Let me ask you from a developer standpoint, maybe wade through the things that might come out in a beta, the issues, compared to what should be fixed by now. How's it doing?
I would think the welcome map thing would be further along. I think the update manager configuring the sources is completely confusing. I don't understand why they give you recommendations for what to choose, but when you go into the app to do it, it makes it look like it gives you an enable box and an update box. And it makes it look like you need the documentation, because I walked through the steps in the welcome thing, and it makes it look like you do, okay, check all the boxes for whatever repository you want. That's not what the update checkbox is for. The update checkbox tells you there's updates, but it looks like a checkbox. It looks exactly like the checkbox for the enable the repo. And that, I don't know how many times I clicked on these stupid things trying to make them do something. And then I realized, because I didn't have an internet connection at the time, so I didn't know that there weren't updates. There were updates because nothing was updated. So that was a little odd. Let me check my list here. There is one that maybe comes out. Hopefully they get fixed. I get a systemd GPT auto generator failure on the first boot every time. I don't know why. It populates and it's not really using the auto generator. It populates everything in the FS tab, but it gives an error even when I let it take over and do all the partitioning itself. So something's odd there. I don't know enough about systemd at the moment to speak to it. I really liked in the installer removing unused locales. I really like not having it probe for other OSs. I did not like having it remove the ability to set up the wireless after install. If you can do it on the live, you should be able to do it on the installed. And maybe there's a way to do it, but if you don't have an internet connection, you can't download the package.
Right.
And apparently it doesn't go to the install.
On that one, Dolphin, do you think that's to do with once you've installed everything, it just says, okay, hold on a minute, I'm now going to uninstall everything you don't need. And because you haven't bothered setting up a network connection, it then removes the ability to set it up later.
That's what I initially thought. I checked. It doesn't remove the Broadcom stuff was not listed in the packages to remove. If you click on the little advanced button, it tells you what it's going to remove. Now, assuming they're removing everything, only what they have listed, then that would be accurate. I can't go back and check now because I have it working now. In fact, I was installing Zoom on the flat hub.
When you first boot the installer, does it actually install those files to the hard disk or just into RAM, which would make them go away when you reboot into the real system anyway?
I'm not exactly sure how the installer works. I think that it has like base system and repository model, like a local repository, and then if you need the proprietary Broadcom drivers, it goes to its local, because there's 2 local repositories configured on the live disk, but they don't go out into the world. They're on the disk. There's this limited subset of packages in it, and that's where it's pulling the Broadcom from, which is great. I mean, it works great if you do it during the setup, but if you don't set up the internet connection during the setup, it's not going to work. It's a catch-22 if you happen to have this kind of machine, because there is no option for a network port unless you got one lane or a Ethernet port.
But if they're on the disk, you should be able to grab them from the command line once you're into the real install.
I don't think they go over to the install. I think they're on the live system, but I don't think they're in the
disk. If you still have the disk in your USB port or your optical drive, whichever you're using, you should be able to go into that disk and pull the drivers off
probably, but it
should be easy. Yes.
I just went back through and reinstalled it again.
Yeah, we're then on advanced users, though, aren't we?
Well, mostly I wanted to see if I actually set it up, if that would carry over, or if it would ignore it on the redo. Every now and then you find one that when you set up the wireless and the live, and then you reinstall that doesn't carry over, and they really should. Let me see things that didn't. The updater's kind of interesting. I think it goes through multiple trips through their repositories when it does updates. So it'll do like all the updates in core, and then when the core updates are done, then it goes whatever the next one is. I haven't decided how that works yet, but oftentimes an update will finish, the updater will close, and then the updater reopens right back up and does some more updates. Maybe that's expected. I don't know. It just seemed a little. Over in Debian world, we just grab everything at once. Maybe it's safer that way. I don't know. User creation on first boot, sources on first boot. Okay, there is a crap ton of printer applications installed, which is both interesting and weird. We actually had the same discussion in MX at one time about supplying the HP lib GUI on all the systems, and a lot of people are like, I don't want a GUI for a printer that I don't have on there. Okay, fine, whatever. We don't put it on there. We got the setup tools in the command line, but they've got like an Epson one, they've got a HP one, they've got all sorts. I don't know. There's several. So that was kind of neat. There was something else, but I think the big one right now, and I not the big one, I guess, but let's see. There are 2 hangups that I think maybe should have been picked up by now, and maybe it's just I don't know what the deal is. One is, well, I mentioned it already, the theming, the themes, the only themes that seem to work correctly are the Adwaita themes.
That's
and then
something that should be done.
And it's a big one because you click on the appearance, like what's not working? Is it XFCE that's not working, or is it the themes? So I'm pretty sure it's the themes because I cracked several of them open and they only have GTK2 folders. So there's the danger of jumping to a development version of something before you understand what's going on. And then clicking on the main category in their software system, the software manager, if there are subcategories, clicking on the main category doesn't give you anything, which is odd. I would think clicking on the main category would give you everything under this in that category, but it doesn't. You have to expand it and get the subcategories. So that was a little strange. But I think that the big ones for me are the mismatch in the information in the welcome screen isn't exactly what's happening on the system. It tells you you're installed even if you've never installed the installer. That's a big one. And then my train of thought's derailed at the station. I don't know. I lost it.
It's all good.
But, I like the setup. I kind of like it's nice and colorful, but it's weird. I've yet to install something Flatpak successfully. It is tripped out halfway through the Zoom install like 3 times. I don't know what's going on there, and I'm a little concerned about this GPT error. This systemd. Systemd will search a GPT formatted disk, partition disk, and auto generate unit file so it can mount it and unmount it and all that stuff. And I don't know why I'm getting an error on it because it's a GPT disk. I've got partitions created with their partition tool, and it's still erroring out. And it does it. It's the very first line you see when it boots up, which gives you a little bit of pause when you're first installing it. But I don't know if you'd find this stuff in the beta 2. You might find it at beta 2 because they obviously, from what you guys have been reporting on beta 1, they obviously fixed a crap ton of stuff between beta 1 and beta 2. So maybe they can work on some of these other issues.
Yeah. Kevin made a comment in the chat saying that the themes are, maybe not on the high priority list. And I'm not saying it word for word, but he's basically saying in the beta that themes are not the highest priority. That would be the last thing they would work on. But I think that it's a little bit more than just polish. I think if the themes aren't working at all, that's a little bit more than just polish.
If they can drop in a couple of folders so it can actually work, it's kind of bad, and it can actually even lead to bad development cycle because of stuff not working correctly.
Right.
And I think that theming also follows through to the KDE version, because come to think about it, I'm using the dark version, yet I've still got light borders everywhere. So something's not quite right.
No, if they got some technical issues to jump through yet, that's fine. I'm just...
Maybe that's
the first thing I did was crack the thing open to change the really bright theme to something a little darker, and none of the other themes work. So, and there's I accept that notion, but there's like 50 of them. There's not 50. There's a lot. There's a lot of them in there, and none of them will work with the XFCE version they have in there because they have the 4.13 development series.
Well, where exactly does that fall in your development stage with MX? As far as theming, is that something that you would think would be fixed in a beta? Or, Kevin had also mentioned that devs might only test one theme as they're working on the distro. So where does that fall?
I got a little bit of blessing with the MX team because our art director is already thinking about this stuff for the next release. But also, we haven't had to think about it a whole lot because over here in Debian world, we're still using the old XFCE. So we haven't had to really, our themes are still working right now. Now we got a little bit when we switch over to Buster because Debian Buster has got some of it is the old XFCE with GTK2 and some of it, mostly plugins and stuff. Some of it's switching over to GTK3. So we're dealing with it now. But yeah, right now, if you took the default theme in MX and moved it over to Buster, right now it doesn't look right. It works. It just doesn't look right. I don't know. Beta 2, if I was listing a beta 2 to the public, and I had 20, 30 themes in my appearance manager, I'd probably make sure at least half of them worked. Or I'd take them off. I mean, if I'm only working with 2 themes, take the rest off.
The theme I chose.
We did that during the beta 1 for MX the last time, we took a bunch of them out because they just weren't working. So I don't know. And it's not a big deal, I guess. The two Big Daddy GTK ones are working fine, and they look okay. And I don't want to get too hung up on a theme, but there's a lot there that they put on the ISO that doesn't work, and maybe it'd just be easier to take them off. I didn't put them on there.
Dave, what'd you think? Or didn't you get a chance to test it?
I got a chance to test it, but I only had the beta 1. And for some reason, it did not like my hardware. The Grub offered 4 options: live free drivers, live non-free drivers, install free drivers, install non-free drivers. Every time, no matter which one I tried, it would get to the splash screen. I gave each one an hour. It never got. Now, when I did the non-free drivers, it showed that it was building the NVIDIA modules and then installing the NVIDIA modules. So I don't think it was the NVIDIA card that was causing your problems. It was something after that. It would just hang on the pretty little, it looks almost like a cocktail cup of champagne with the bubbles coming up and down. And, you know, it was like a lava lamp. And I let it sit for an hour each. And, you know, after 4 hours, I wish I would have had time today if I wasn't traveling to give the beta 2 a try, but it didn't like my hardware, so I didn't get a chance to try it.
One of the things I noticed about that was if you then press the up arrow on your keyboard, that splash screen goes away and you can see all the text that's happening in the background. Yeah. But it's no different because it just says sitting there installing a video.
Is that some secret code that we didn't know about or what?
Don't know. I randomly
starts pushing buttons when stuff is stuck.
He just started pushing his buttons on his keyboard.
Well, I try not to press escape because that's obviously going to give some sort of command, but the up arrow is normally quite harmless, or the shift.
I'm going to try that next time.
Up arrow, and that splash screen goes away and you can see what's happening in the background.
Good tip.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember which, but I've seen that in other distros as well. And I want to say I've hit the control or the shift key, one of the two, and had something very similar. And you can just toggle back and forth with one of the two. But
a lot of times,
it's happened in Mint.
A lot of times that's because when they set the Plymouth theme, they set it to manual. That way you can hit up or page up or down or page down, depending on how it's set. And that'll allow you to change from the normal boot animation that you're seeing to seeing the text fly by. So if you go and install whatever the Plymouth theme changer is, I don't remember off the top of my head, and you set it to be manual, then next time you boot up or shut down sometimes, you hit that button and you can actually see what it's doing. It's something you have to do manually, but it can be useful sometimes for debugging. So, yeah.
And one thing for Thomas, I used to always hack into my sudoers file, but I don't anymore. Anything I want to put in for my user, I actually etsy sudoers.d/90-David, and anything that I would normally have put into the sudoers file, I put into that file, and it works like it's just in the sudoers file. So you don't have to worry about hosing the rest to get what you want for yourself into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just not familiar with the syntax you're supposed to use inside the sudoers file, so I try not to fiddle with it too much. Because
I hate having to enter my password every time, so I know exactly what I'm echoing into that. So it's
yeah.
That comes after many times of messing it up, right, Dave?
Okay. Yes.
All right, Paul. Did you get to try Mageia?
Yeah, I tried it, but I got a lot of screen tearing on my NVIDIA, so it just drove me nuts. I can't handle that screen tearing.
It was a big next for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know. Look at this familiar face we got here, Mr. Gentoo.
Hey, how's it going?
Jonas, what's going on, man?
Is my mic working?
It's a little low, but it is working.
Hold on, let me see if I can turn that up really quick. So I did actually try Mageia. Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, so I did actually try it. I only spent about 3 days with it, and considering it's not normally my cup of tea, I tried to look at it more from the user experience, like if I'm a newcomer to Linux, or if I'm just, not an advanced Linux user, don't care about all the fiddling and stuff. So that was the mindset that I approached it with. So pretty much like everyone else has said, the installation was a little different than what we're mostly used to. I was thrown off, for example, by having to create the user account after installation. But from the perspective of selling a computer, and like if you're going to install it for someone to give it to them, okay, yeah, that actually does make perfect sense as far as why they set it up that way. I share everyone else's confusion by needing a root login at Grub after you finish the installation. I've never seen that before. And yeah, so other than that, the actual GUI itself, once I got it installed, the first thing I always look at as a new Linux user is, okay, how do I update the system? Does the graphic package management system actually work the way it's supposed to? Because if you're someone who doesn't want to mess with a terminal, that's an important quality that I think you would want in a beginner-friendly or new user-friendly distribution, which I think is what Mageia is aiming for. But I noticed immediately after booting in, it ran into issues trying to run updates, something about dependencies. I should have probably taken a screenshot to see what it was. So when I ran into those issues with updating, the next thing I did was popped open a terminal. Once I realized it was using DNF as a package manager, I was also slightly annoyed to find that sudo was not installed by default. But SU worked just fine, and I was able to get it updated through there. So after I updated, rebooted, decided to try the graphic package manager again in the Mageia control center, and this time it actually did work the way you would expect it to. It actually found more packages and things that it had to update, and it installed without any particular issues after that. But a new Linux user would not probably think to go and try, oh, maybe I just update it through the terminal. So to me, it's like, okay, that might be something they might want to polish between beta and actual release. Even though I know it's not uncommon for distros to have issues with their graphic package managers. But the next thing I tried doing was actually installing software that they advertise in their software center. So I tried Steam, figured, okay, people like to play games. Steam is very common. You see people make videos all the time about Steam on Linux. And I was disappointed because it ran into dependency issues when I clicked install. Even searching around in the package manager itself in the terminal through DNF, running DNF searches, I couldn't find the dependencies it was looking for. And I actually couldn't even find a reference to a Steam RPM or an installer or anything like that. So, okay. Not the best impression as far as the software center goes that they offer. Maybe that's just something else that they're still in the process of working out in beta. Let's see what else. I have some other notes here too. I also noticed there was no network manager applet installed by default. I opted for the XFC version just because I wanted to see how it would handle on a lightweight desktop environment that's pretty popular. So I had to manually add the network applet myself. And even after I added it, I noticed that the graphic bugs when you're switching between wireless and Ethernet, I noticed this because, going back and forth between here and work, I'm back and forth between wireless and Ethernet. And yeah, you basically have to restart the desktop environment to fix that little graphic bug. Even if you switch to Ethernet, if you were on wireless, it'll still show the little wireless icon. So that was just another little quirk that I noticed. In addition to the themes, I also noticed it was too bright. I tried to, play around with the different themes, and I was also surprised that only Adoa Dark worked. There was a few others that would have been nice if they worked, but I can understand if, that's not a priority, at this point in a beta. So as far as the distro aside, the next thing I tried to focus on, okay, let me get my normal workflow applications installed. So for me, that would be things like VMware Workstation, because I do a lot of stuff with VMs, especially with pen testing distros like Kali and vulnerable VMs from VulnHub. So, that was a big thing for me. I did have to install the kernel headers through the terminal so that VMware Workstation could actually compile all the drivers that it needed. Android Studio worked just fine with the binary that they provide in the tar. SyncThing, my decentralized cloud storage of choice, also had to go manually grab that because it wasn't included in their repositories, which I was surprised because it's pretty much in the repos for any other distro I've looked at in the last year and a half. But I was able to get my whole workflow set up though. So if I absolutely, had to live on Mageia and get work done, yes, I could do it. But Rocco, I did also notice that the system felt a little sluggish the entire time, which surprised me on XFCE because, I think of that as being lightweight. Was looking at how it was performing through the system monitor. Nothing really stood out to me as far as what might be wrong. So not too sure what's up with the system feeling sluggish. Overall, would I recommend it for new users or anyone who's new to Linux? No, probably not. Just because of the issues I experienced with trying to use their update system and because of the quirks with the theming and the quirks with installing software through the software center. So that's pretty much 3 strikes right there that any new user or beginner would care about and would probably be instantly turned off by if they ran into those issues.
Right.
So, if you're an advanced Linux user and you really, really want to use Mageia, you want to support it, yes, you can make it work for yourself if you spend the time with it, but no, I won't do that.
No, probably not. And most people won't. But people that, I used to run Mageia for a couple months years ago. So, there are the community around it. So there are people that like it. It's just not for me. So. All right, Chris, what did you think of Mageia, brother?
Well, I kind of liked it. Don't know if I would continue with it once it gets out of beta release, but I've been testing it on real hardware, and the real hardware has always been a problem. There's something going wrong with the BIOS, and so I use it as kind of a trial by fire for our challenges. And if they seem to be able to handle that error, it seems to be a pretty good, solid OS. Now, all I have to say is thank God for my LPIC 1 training that I've been doing, because I knew that the password that it was asking for right at the beginning there was for the grub. It was something that I hadn't really expected to see, but once I did see it, I was like, they're asking for that password. And come to think of it, the having to do the new user login or setup after the reboot was kind of weird, but nothing really something that threw me off my game. What did throw me off my game was the package manager, and I was doing the intent of running all 3 flavors that were off the website, but time constraints only allowed me to do the GNOME or GNOME. And going down on the command line, trying to figure out what the package manager command line was interesting. I ended up Googling it and figuring it out, but figured it was a RPM distro, but it didn't occur to me to do a DNF. I probably would have liked that a lot better. Every time I tried to run the update, which was a really odd, because you got to use POSIX commands, update, 2 different updates in there, and it just always came up saying nothing to update. Everything was up to date, and I was like, this doesn't seem right. But far as it working with any of the software like LibreOffice, any of the other stuff that I might use on there, I was, except for I was not able to install Lazarus, which is the free version. Well, it's
forked well off of Delphi by now, but it was using Delphi as a basis for it. I was not able to get that installed only because I wasn't able to figure out the package command. And I went through the GUI, tried to figure that out. Couldn't figure out if it was checked, if it was installed, or it was going to be installed or updated. It's just, if I had a little more time with it, I probably would have figured it out. But I said, okay, that's something to do later on, and I never got back to it. But it looks smooth. It looks pretty, and I mean, it was very I mean, the eye candy on it was really nice. I really liked it. And GNOME, I did not have any problems with the performance of GNOME on the on that 2 gig laptop that I installed it on. So maybe I'll look at it a little bit later.
There you go. Carmine in the house. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I know it's been a while. All I can say is thank God I use Ubuntu.
You didn't want to go through all these headaches, man?
I had a safe day today. I installed a snap package and tested it out. Audacity. No, I
nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I installed it, and it seems to run a little bit faster than the package from the Synaptic Package Manager. But yeah, I distro hopped from 2006 to I finally stopped at 2016 when I found Ubuntu Unity. What was it, 16 to be my Linux quality standard, you know. But I have to tell you something, you know, all those years of distro hopping, and now I'm using Ubuntu and Ubuntu based. To me, in my tests, strictly my opinion, there seems to be a certain residue of a quality standard for Linux, if there is such a thing. And for me, that was either Ubuntu or Ubuntu based. Ubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, Linux Mint, Zorin, Peppermint. I don't have those issues, the amount that you guys are describing. And it's almost like, you know, I'm looking at this through a dual booter's eyes. I still use Windows, not as much, maybe 20%. That's how good Linux, or that's how good Ubuntu has gone over the years, or Ubuntu based. But it seems like after 13 years of Linux, you have at least a residue of a Linux quality standard, which is Ubuntu or Ubuntu based in my test. And then you have the leftover, which is the experimental trash heap of Linux history in my tests, you know. And maybe that's why Linux desktop is still a 2% market share. I think my mom's homemade bread has a higher market share, you know, than the Linux desktop. But that's why I stopped. I mean, I'll test a few distros here and there, but I stopped hopping because what I found out after all these years, I was just hopping from bugs to bugs to bugs to a different set of bugs, and it was ridiculous, you know. So I thought to myself, okay, which one has given me the least amount of headaches? Ubuntu or Ubuntu base? Now, I'm not sure the exact reason for that. Maybe Alan Pope can chime in. But for me, as a Windows user, not as much, granted, maybe 20%, you know, today, because I don't find Windows 10 as fun or as pleasant to use as Windows 7. But there seems to be a certain level of quality, or a residue of quality, with Ubuntu or Ubuntu based versus all the rest in my test on different machines. And I don't think I'm the only one. But anyway, that's how I see it. So I don't distro hop anymore. I will test here and there, but that's as far as I go. So
are you sure Alan's not paying you to say this stuff?
Alan said, Alan, here's the account number, by the way. I'll send it to you. Give me one. No, just kidding.
I understand exactly what he's saying because I feel the same way.
Yep.
And I've been on Ubuntu since 2011, and I'll look at these other things, but I was stick with Ubuntu to do.
You know, and this is
it works.
It just freaking works.
Exactly.
And I'm tired of Windows users saying, "Well, Linux sucks." Well, which one? Which one?
That's a good response.
If it's Arch Linux as your first exposure, well, duh. Or if it,
I resent that.
users.
If you're going into Arch Linux from a Windows user's perspective, yes, Arch sucks. However, if you're going into it with a wealth of Linux knowledge, it does not suck.
Now,
I totally agree.
No, if you are a Windows user from long enough ago where you started in DOS, Arch works just fine.
No, it doesn't.
But do you really
I don't like Arch.
You really want to go back to those days with text unless that's your thing?
I started in 79 with text. There was no GUI.
I don't think Thomas was born in 79.
73, there was even
I'm 19. I'm used to GUIs. Okay? I didn't grow up with text.
Here we go again.
Same here.
Well, nothing tops stability. I don't care if it's Windows, Mac, Joe Schmo, Linux. It doesn't matter. My 13 years, and I call it as I see it. I would not call myself an advanced user because I still dual boot here and there. I think advanced users are the ones who just use Linux and that's it, A to Z. That's an advanced user, But maybe I'm semi-advanced. I don't know. But in my tests, over 13 years, Ubuntu and Ubuntu base seem to me to give me the least amount of headaches. Now there have been some other distros that have been good. MX, I think I tested was okay. I think it's based on Debian stable, right? I think, and a few other ones. But over the years, in terms of user friendliness, again, I'm trying to think of the eyes of a newbie, what he or she sees to make it easier for that person. There's only Ubuntu and Ubuntu base. And again, maybe that's why the desktop share for Linux is still a pitiful 2%. I want it to be 20%, 50%. Because Windows 7 usage went up last month. Really? Really? Because there's a lot of users out there.
Soon.
They don't like Windows 10. And the alternative is, well, okay, I can go back to Windows 7. I don't want to spend $2,000 on a Mac, and there's nothing in between. That's
and Windows 7 is only supported until next January.
Right.
And nobody likes Windows 8 because Windows 8 is trash.
And as much as I love Arch, I agree with him about Ubuntu. It is just the least headachy working system out there.
I want
that's why a lot of disrespect
Linux standard to be Ubuntu, the quality standard. That's what I want. Okay. I want
bringing it back on topic.
20%.
Carmine, bringing it back on topic. You didn't try Mageia.
I did not test Macaca. No, I mean Mageia.
All right.
I have tested RPM based distros, which I liked. What the heck was it? It was PC Linux OS.
Yeah.
As a full install free, and I was impressed by this. I can't say it's for newbies, but I was impressed with that RPM based system. I think it's RPM, isn't it?
I don't think there's an RPM based out there that's for newbies.
Probably not. But in terms of being stable, it didn't have the latest software, but that was okay. I installed it on one of my ThinkPads for a year. I kept it in there, and then, wow, this didn't crash. Imagine that, But that's as far as I got as far as our RPM. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, JJ, what's happening? JJ.
He just went out. He said in the chat.
He said he'll be right back.
Okay. All right, Steve, you here?
Yep.
There he is.
Yep, I'm here.
What's happening, brother?
Not much. Didn't do the distro challenge. Kind of glad I didn't.
I don't think you missed much, dude, to be honest with you.
This is like one big therapy session I was listening to for the last 40 minutes. I'm like, okay.
All right. Well, we spent a whole hour on Mageia. That is amazing. I did not think we were going to do that. I don't know how we did it, but thanks to the detailed talk discussions. Yeah, that was awesome. All right. So, what are our thoughts on next week's distro?
Good question.
Ubuntu Mini ISO. Build from that base. Just
really,
do whatever
James?
you want.
Really?
Yeah.
As much fun as that sounds, no.
I'm doing it now. I'm trying to build a secure system.
I thought you were downloaded Mageia 7.
Oh, I did.
Oh,
it's still installing.
It's in the words of a very wise man. pass.
Right. Okay.
Rocco, there's a couple of distros during the week I've noticed. One is Salient OS from Silent
I've been having
Robot.
fun playing with that.
And also the other one is Amtech Designs has a deep in Arch Linux as well. So
we've done that one.
Have we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did we?
did that. We did that on the 12th of January.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think
I don't
Silent
remember
is a
that.
part of the Biddle community. I think we, if he has it out there to download and test out, I think we should test it out and give him some feedback.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this is an Arch-based distro. Okay, so the other one thing that he wanted me to pass on is if you're going to download it and test it out, please read the README file. That's what it's there for.
Hey, he echoed me.
So if if you're going to download it, open up the README file and read it. It may help you out with issues on the install.
Yeah, because he does do a couple of things minorly different than some of the other Arch distros out there.
And just so you know, Thomas, the top of the README file is add yourself to sudoers.
This is gonna be fun.
So,
but he actually does list out exactly what to put in the file.
Yeah, a simple copy and paste.
Yes, he does do
That's
that.
helpful. Okay then.
Well, I hope everything that's on the README file is the same thing that's on the website, because I didn't know the README file was there till I read it all off the website on SourceForge. So it must be the same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
Say that it's still in alpha. If you go to SourceForge, I'm looking at it right now, and it says status alpha.
Yeah,
Well,
it's about 3 weeks old.
Oh,
yeah. I just asked him on the YouTube chat, and he said we're good to test.
Okay.
Yep.
He said the ISOs were refreshed this evening.
Yep, that's what he said.
Yeah, he did
so
say that.
Yeah.
it's
4
everything.
hours ago I sold.
Now he
Now I
said
gotta
that he
download
tested
them
it
again.
out on bare metal, and it does work well. So we just got to give him some feedback. Now, if you don't want to try this, I mean, it is an Arch-based distro, so if you're not comfortable with Arch, skip a week. So I don't want anybody blowing up their grub and not being able to use their system because they're trying out a distro.
I'm
Right on a
gonna test it.
It's going to be fun.
We like
I am
pain,
going to
Thomas.
test
That's
this.
why we do this. Okay, we like pain.
Well, you see, I am going to test this.
Linux is supposed to hurt.
See, that's Dave saying.
No pain, no gain.
But that's not why we scare people away, because it shouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
And if you don't want Linux to hurt, you go use either Linux Mint or Zorin OS, preferably Linux Mint.
the way I hack on Windows when I'm in that environment, Windows hurts. So
Well, you'll be happy
Did
to
you
know
know
I've taken
that-
away a lot of the pain because this will be my 15th install for Salient.
Wow.
We've been through a lot of ISOs together.
So you're an expert at the install. So any trouble, send all the telegrams to Zeb.
Any
Talk to
trouble,
Zeb.
speak to Silent. Yeah.
And what's I don't understand what this not blowing up system's all about, Rocco. What are you
Really?
talking about?
I know,
Well-
Colin. It's a part of life sometimes, but
Why do you take the fun out of things? I don't know.
See, Colin, that's pretty much my approach at this point. If I blow up Grub, I blow up Grub, and I have to figure out a way to fix Grub.
you can pay.
Well, I'm to the point now where I think I have a total of 5 systems installed, 5 OSs, and I have blown up the grub on every one of them except one. So that's the only one that I can use that will actually boot to the other OSs on my computer, and I haven't taken the time to fix any of the other grubs. So I got one grub left.
Don't you have a Grub 2 USB stick that you can boot off of?
No.
Are there any viable alternatives to Grub yet?
Yeah, what you do is you install Arch first, and then you install everything else, and then everything's fine.
Yeah, I got
Kinda like Arch is like
these EFI things on my laptop. I don't know how to get rid of this stuff.
I
Oh,
could
you
get
say
rid
you
of it
said-
for you. The
say you
laptop
getting
might
rid
not
of it?
work.
Getting
Oh, yeah.
rid of EFIs is not that hard. First, you
No,
delete
EFI is the
all-
future. EFI is the future.
I'm not saying to get rid of it. I'm saying get rid of the ones you're not using, because unless you format the ESP partition, they're still there, and they might still be registered in your NVRAM. And depending on how old your PC is, it is actually possible to flood during a kernel panic. It's actually possible to flood the NVRAM and hose it, because I did it to this computer I'm on right now a few years ago, and I haven't had that problem in a long time.
I'm an expert at that.
But all you got to do is you go into your system UEFI tool, you delete all the entries from the NVRAM, but those stub files are probably still on the drive. So you mount, it's just a FAT32 partition. You mount the partition, you delete all the files you don't need, and you're done. The only trick you're going to get is you've got a bunch of Ubuntu systems on there, because they all say Ubuntu, and you're going to figure out which one's which. Yeah, I'm just saying.
That's a problem.
I actually found that out because I tried Archman just recently, and they actually have a refined UEFI installer. So I loaded this thing up, and I'm going through all of the entries, and I'm thinking, hang on, I've already deleted that from EFI Boot Manager, and that one's not there, and that one's not there. And what's these 4 Solus entries? Oh, look, none of them work. But it was after I used Refined and I reinstalled Solus that Solus suddenly worked as an EFI bootloader thing. So, but I still can't find out where or what partition all of these UEFI bits are on.
Well, I would like to raise a question to the guy who's sort of been behind the scenes with regards to Ubuntu stuff. Ubuntu podcast, cough, cough. Alan, I just want to check with you. How are we too dependent on Grub at all?
I don't understand why that would be a problem, even if we were.
Well, I mean, aren't there any? I mean, open source is the maiden of necessity of new stuff if stuff breaks on people. So if there's anything that's on an alternative to Grub, I know that there are many alternatives to the UEFI system, as well as I know there's like an open firmware thing that I'm trying to remember that goes way back.
To Willow.
Huh?
Willow?
So
no, Lilo.
Lilo, yeah.
Lilo.
Lilo.
Oh.
One of the things that you don't want to do is screw up the boot process. Like if you can't even get into your system, like there are so many ways in which you can hose your system, and step 1, booting it, is really where you don't want to fall foul. And I would much rather put my trust in people who've been developing software for a very long time and have a lot of experience in making bootloaders than some fly-by-night cowboy who's made a new bootloader. So I'm going to stick with Grub.
And the other thing is, Grub, unless you're doing a lot of distro hopping or a lot of distro installing like we do, Grub just works. It's just good and solid. If you just are putting a system on your computer and you're going to leave it, you really can't get much better than Grub.
No, Chicken's not here.
I messed up Grub if I did custom partitioning and I did something wrong. But if I do the automatic install Ubuntu based, works about 100% of the time. Yeah.
I think we've all had an experience where we've messed the system up in some way.
Never.
Whether it, I mean, specifically Grub, like whether it's installing a distro that wasn't respecting other distros, or installing Windows that blatted Grub config, or something. So I think we've all got the battle scars for using Grub and having experienced bad.
Although many distros use different versions of Grub, which sort of confuses people as well, don't they?
I don't know. I don't mix and match.
I think they theme it more differently.
Mostly just themes are different. Yeah,
they theme it differently, but I mean, Grub is still Grub. The only time I've ever seen Grub mess up was when I was first learning how to install it myself. Other than that, like everyone else said, Grub just works. I've never really had issues with it.
And let's face it, the average user probably won't even know about Grub. They'll just install Ubuntu. Ubuntu will be set to just boot straight into the OS, or whatever you're going to install will just go straight into the OS, and they won't even know Grub exists. It's only people like us who mess around with it.
Because the average user is only going to have one operating system on their computer. They're not going to have multiple distros.
Dual booters will notice Grub because they'll say, how do you want to install this? Do you want to keep Windows dual boot or something else, which might confuse them? That's why I say, obviously, if you want a dual boot, which is not the best way, but if you want to make sure you back up, you should be backing up anyway, obviously.
Mhm.
But if you want to use, it's your first time, use the automatic install. To me, it's worked 99% of the time. It's usually safe. Now, nothing is perfect. So, and I think the dog agrees with me.
So
But-
we're talking Grub, not Grub Legacy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Grub too.
Yeah, normally I shrink the partition in Windows 10 and have that free space. I can't recommend that for newbies, for the first time. But that's how I just leave that free space to install, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, or whatever I'm doing. So
I think the safest choice for me, anyway, is to have Windows on one partition. Not
the
one
safest
partition,
way is a
one
separate
separate
ThinkPad,
drive.
right, Alan? A
Mhm.
separate
No.
machine. Yeah.
Separate drive for Windows and a separate drive for Linux.
Yes.
I
A
have the
separate
one drive.
machine for Windows.
I have
Well,
the
separate
one drive.
machine for Linux, a ThinkPad, all the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you think about it, Barb, a lot of people, okay, you hear all the time the main reason that people don't switch to Linux is gaming. Okay,
Mhm.
they can't get their games on Linux,
Mhm.
and most people don't have two gaming machines.
True.
So, like me, I have a laptop or two, but none of them are going to play any games. So for me, I have one machine basically.
Mhm.
So I can't have two different machines, one for Windows, one for Linux. I have to have one. So that's why I choose to have two separate hard drives. That way I don't mess with. I
safe.
spent so much time reinstalling both Linux and Windows
Mhm.
that it's just keep them on separate drives and you'll be better off.
That's
I
why I
agree.
got so excited when I found out about the Nicey dock.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, I guess I'm not a gamer, so to me, if I don't have Windows, I don't really care because I'm not a gamer.
Yeah.
And everything I
If
can
you
do
have
is-
to game, you have to stick with Windows. I mean, I disconnected
can
my
see that.
disk drive.
It's easy. It's getting easier on Linux.
Whatever
Yeah, but
So I'm a full-time Linux user, and I have been since 2013, 2014, somewhere along those lines.
Mhm.
And I game exclusively on Linux. Now, I did get a Shadow recently, and if you have a Shadow subscription, then your remote VM runs Windows, and you're stuck with that. But the only thing I ever ran on that was Skyrim, and that was it. And the issues I've had with Skyrim have been fixed. So I don't even use my Shadow anymore. I run all my games locally, and I have the hardware to do it.
Right.
It's because Steam Play is getting so good, you're having less and less of a reason to not at least try to game on Linux if you do game at all. If you don't game, don't bother with it. But if you do game, at least try Steam Play on Linux, because for a Linux user who games, it's one of the best things that could have ever happened as far as getting your games on Linux, because it is so simple.
I totally
But that
agree. It's gone
still
better.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
It still has a long way to go. It still has a long way to go, but the leaps and bounds they've made in the 2 months, 3 months that Steam Play has been around have been incredible.
They've made some great games, but it depends on which games you play.
Yeah, like the main issue.
None of the Battlefield games will play on Linux. Okay, there have been one or two people out there who have, did some tweaking and got Battlefield, one or two guys to work on Linux. But your normal everyday gamer is not going to get Battlefield to run on Linux.
No.
They're not going to get the anti-cheat softwares.
Yes,
on Linux
anti-cheat.
that come with a lot of the FPS shooters and stuff like that. So, yes, Proton Steam Play has come
better.
a long way,
Right. But it's
still
not there.
It's not the
It's-
answer. Let's put it that way.
Steam machines, I guess,
It's a
puttered
path.
what I
It's
read.
a beginning of a path that's being dug for the new user.
Yes, it is a huge step in the right direction, but it's not the whole thing. It's not even a tenth of it. But
I
it
think
is
DXVK
Definitely more than a
is
tenth of it.
more of a step towards integration than
Well,
Proton itself.
some people have been saying and theorizing that Steam might be going into streaming games on remote servers running Linux. So technically, this Proton stuff might be experimentation for gaming without having to resolve to Windows license issues on their end.
See, it could also be their way of trying to get SteamOS to be more viable, which let's be honest here, SteamOS is suffering right now. They have an old kernel. They have a lot of issues in general right now.
Recently, so what's bad about it?
I haven't tested it recently, but to start off with, it's a pain in the butt to make a bootable ISO. No normal person is going to make a bootable ISO using what they hand you. They do not hand you an ISO. They hand you essentially source code, and you have to build an ISO from that.
Michael's not normal. That's why he's like looking off into the distance.
Yeah, I know that.
All right, before we go any further, welcome to the people that I haven't mentioned yet because we didn't get around to it. Ritual, Michael, Nate, and Frank.
Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome, guys.
Mahalo.
All right. I do want to cover one thing because I think it's important, even though it's a mute point at this point. Get it? Alan, why is apt being replaced with Snap? So if you don't know what I'm talking about, there have been rumors out there. There's a Launchpad site with a blueprint stating that apt is going to be replaced by Snap, and this is simply rumors. Am I correct, Alan?
So what happened was on Friday, I got a DM on Twitter from a blogger while I was in a taxi on the way to the airport, heading home from Malta, where I've been working. And I'd had my head down working and not seen much of any of this nonsense. And the blogger asked me, it gave me a link to this blueprint. And for those who don't know, blueprints is a feature of Launchpad, and Launchpad is a site we use to develop Ubuntu. And blueprints is a mechanism where people can create plans, if you like, and discuss those plans. And those plans may turn into features or they may turn into nothing. And if you scroll through all of the plans going back the last 12, 13, whatever years, you'll find some that turned into actual features and actual things that happened. And you'll find a whole load that turned into nothing because they were just discussion points. And it's always been the case that blueprints have been something that people could create so that anyone could come along and say, oh, I've got a great idea. Here's a great thing that could improve Ubuntu dramatically. And so we've always made it so that anyone can create blueprints. And the way it works is there's some simple project management stuff in there, like you can have someone who approves it and you can schedule it to appear in an event so that when you go to the event and all the developers turn up, you can schedule it to appear so that lots of different people can all discuss the thing and you can decide on whether the thing is important or not or whatever. And people create random blueprints all the time. And for some reason, someone created one back in January that had some opinion, just like any other. Like, it's not good opinion, it's not bad opinion, it's just opinion. And some suggestions on something someone might want to do with Ubuntu, or a change that might be interesting in Ubuntu. So I got sent this link on Friday, and I said they said they were going to write an article about it, and I said, well, there's not a lot of point because effectively this is just some random person on the internet writing their opinion, and if you're going to write a blog post about some random person's opinion on the internet, then you're going to be very, very busy indeed, because there's a lot of those on the internet. So I said, like, there's no, it's not fact, it's not a plan that we're enacting, it's not something we are even discussing, it's just not a thing. And they went, oh, okay, so I won't write anything because I don't want to sensationalize it and draw attention to it. I was like, okay. And that was the last I'd heard of it. And then for some reason on Twitter this morning, I saw in hashtag Ubuntu, someone had linked to a video, and I looked at it and it raised the subject of this blueprint. And I thought, oh, Christ, it's Saturday morning. I actually have to go and take my daughter to a friend's house and go and watch my son play football. He plays in a local football team. They're quite good. And I like going to
football or football?
Soccer.
Soccer.
Okay. Yeah, not handball.
Our football.
The real
proper
football.
Football.
So
No, you gotta pronounce it football.
and I quite like going to watch him play football. So I did go watch him play football.
Is that foosball? Foosball?
I'm going to ignore all this.
Not the European League.
So I sat there and bashed out a bunch of tweets to say, don't believe everything you read on the internet. This is not true. And that was that. And that's it. That's basically it. It's storm in a teacup, you know.
Alan, thank you. Seriously, as a Windows user, Linux for a year, you know, we talked about this in one of the live streams a few nights ago, and I'm like, time out. I'm going to hold judgment until I talk to the godfather of Linux, which would be Alan.
No.
I'm just kidding. To the Ubuntu guy from the UK.
I'm just some guy, you know.
I understand. No, but you work for Ubuntu. You work for Canonical, right?
Right, but you could have, like, the person who wrote that could have asked literally anyone who worked on Ubuntu or
I understand
been in the periphery of Ubuntu
or hosted the Ubuntu podcast.
Or they could have read the page a bit better because it very clearly states.
You only needed to read the page. It says not started.
Yeah. This is like, and so, you know, I appreciate if you're outside Ubuntu and you're part of, like, you know, someone looking in and you see this thing on a page and you think, oh man, look, they're doing a thing. I don't know if any of you subscribe to Linus Tech Tips. He's quite a popular YouTuber.
Minus.
But recently, I don't care.
Debian versus Debian?
He had to put out a
video
everybody detailing why there was some drama, and he outlined at the start of the video a really excellent set of steps that you should, like, take a step back, have a look at what's in it for the person who's writing this, who's written it, where has this come from, what's the background of this, what's the rationale, and think about it critically rather than go full bore turning on your webcam and shouting into the internet, because that
I don't think
personally, if that was true, I wouldn't care, because for me, snaps work. If they're stable, I wouldn't care. I mean, I realize it's not, and that's fine. But if it was true, I'm like, so what? They work. They're stable. Now, there was some talk, but the security issue, anybody can put in what they want. I'm like, wait a minute. If anybody can put in what they want, malware, whatever, you think the worldwide Linux community would let that slide and not say something?
Yeah. Well, more importantly, it's more ridiculous that people say that about snaps when snaps have a security confinement structure, whereas devs don't, and devs have instant root control. So as soon as you install a deb and it has malware, then you've gone way farther than the snaps.
Yeah, I get nothing's perfect, nothing's 100%. I get it, but to me, snaps, I haven't tested all the snaps, but the ones that I've installed, hey, this works pretty good.
Right? Yes, I don't necessarily want to, like, make this a whole this versus that packaging system, because I personally don't think the adversarial thing with as you said, Toss, earlier about, you know, our 1%, 2% market share, for us to all argue in amongst each other is utterly pointless.
Yes,
over, like, we are.
You're just wrong.
The we're the flea on the dog's back, right? Like, and we're arguing amongst.
I know. Hey, show some respect to the Ubuntu family, okay?
So I'd way rather, you know, we focused on getting more Windows users over and more Mac users over.
Well, you got me over, and I think some of my friends, and I seriously mean it. Thank you for all the work you do, Alan, there, and the team, and the, you know, Ubuntu to me, I would call it the eighth wonder of the world. To start something from. Well, think about
Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Ubuntu.
Yeah,
not quite
absolutely.
the same.
Okay, well,
Ubuntu's clearly better.
And a close
it's
night.
Still here.
Okay. Well, when it comes to technology, I call Ubuntu.
That was savage right there.
You know, if I was part of that project team on the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, I'd be taking up some serious umbrage here with Dreaming Wolf right now.
But that's
Don't make me come over there to Maryland or wherever the heck you are. I'll find you.
I haven't seen the Hanging Gardens. I haven't seen the Hanging Gardens of Babylon's blueprint system.
Yeah, that's
Probably wasn't Launchpad.
Oh, by the way, Alan, could we briefly ask if there are any updates with regards to snaps? Like, if there's any improvements with regards to the theming, as well as integration, like being still secure yet more integrated into the system that you install the Snap inside?
So it's an interesting question because this week I was at an engineering sprint, as I mentioned, in Malta, and the people who were there are engineers who work on Snapd, Snapcraft, the Ubuntu desktop. There are people who have expertise in security, people who have expertise in theming and all that kind of stuff. And there are already a ton of improvements to a lot of the snaps, so they do look native where they should. And there are further improvements coming. That's about as much as I can say because I don't know the specifics. I know.
I thought I heard in another podcast this past week that I was listening to that most or a lot of the snaps now will respect the system theming. They put in the hooks to actually be able to pull it in and conform to it.
So there's a thing called a content snap. So one snap can consume the content from another snap, and we've got a snap that basically bundles all the most popular themes. And so, you know, if you're using Adwaiter or the Yarrow or, you know, list any popular theme, you know, then it will probably be in there. The problem is we can't put every single theme in there. And so
not with that attitude.
That's one big snap, boy.
So we have to be a bit careful about that. But that's an interim solution. And longer term, yeah, we would like it to just use the theme that's on the system. But that's actually a hard problem to solve. It's not as straightforward as doing that because the themes have different ABIs on different distros. So
and it actually lessens the sandboxing effect if it's going to reach out and try and conform.
That's one of the concerns that our security team have is we can't just let a snap reach into the host and say, give me all the, you know, grubbing around looking for themes and stuff. That is definitely one of the concerns. And there's this constant battle, well, not battle, but struggle, shall I say, where we're trying to give the best experience for the user, make it easy for developers to get their applications out there, make it look good, perform well. And this is a constant struggle to get all of those things, you know, the best they possibly can be. And we tilt one and tilt another a little bit and tilt another. Like there's a whole bunch of snaps that are now 50% the size they were last week. Like Martin Wimpress, my colleague, did a bunch of work and reduced the size of a whole bunch of them by 50%. Nobody will notice that. And we haven't done a blog post that tells you all that these are smaller. We just did it, right? We made them better. We hear when people tell us, like, this thing is slow, this is too large, this doesn't look right. Like, we hear that. And, you know, we want to know exactly what the specifics are so we can fix it. So,
Ellen, is there an official Snap website for us to go to? What's...
Snapcraft.io. And there's a forum.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So, just...
Okay.
Let us know.
There's a store on the Snapcraft issue. There's Snapcraft is both the documentation place and the store place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did somebody mention Ubuntu?
Sorry.
Mr. Quigley in the house.
Yeah, I was just asking, did somebody mention Ubuntu? Because Simon just joined.
Yeah, I'm figuring out my audio and whatever else here real quick.
It sounds great.
It sounds better without a headset, so I can give you that.
Nate, did you want to get anything? I mean, I know we passed it already, but did you want to get anything in on Mageia or no?
I haven't used Mageia this week, so I don't have anything to say really.
Nate, how you changed?
I had some issues. So I downloaded the beta 2, so I'm kind of still evaluating it. I can give real quick positives, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
It reminded me a lot of the Mandrake. Mandrake, because it's from Mandrake, so it still has that same kind of feel. There's obviously a new polish to it. So yeah, that's what I like about it.
Okay, all right.
Next.
Next.
Frank.
Not done.
Frank, real quick, do you want to get anything in on Mageia?
I installed it and it didn't work, and I installed it again and it didn't work.
Wow.
Yeah,
ouch.
Can I just go back and say something about Alan? I want to thank him for doing the YouTube Snapcraft live videos because it's really educational.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind of you to say.
I watched it today too while I was doing dishes because I really like your voice.
Wait. Is that voice without speeding or is that live?
I think what they like about it is because he says, "What are beans?"
Did you listen at single speed, or did you speed it up to 1.3? So I sound like Daffy Duck.
No. It was at speed 1. Actually, I started at speed like 1.25, and then I put it back to 1 because I really enjoyed it. I just kind of I stopped. I'm like, oh.
Doesn't want to ruin the full experience.
It's quite good fun actually. I did the one when I was in Malta on Wednesday, the one we just did, and Martin Wimpress was sat in the room, and then Sergio came in partway through. And so Martin works with me, and Sergio is one of the authors of Snapcraft, the tool, and they were sat there doing answering all the questions while I'm just sat there talking to the camera. It's like having staff to manage your chat.
Unpaid staff, well, I may add.
You didn't have to know about Snapcraft to find it interesting because you were finding it interesting, and you were going, "Oh, I didn't know I could do this." And
that's the thing. There are so because there's like 4 or 5 things that I'm touching in that video that are changing all the time. Like we're rolling out updates all the time. So like something that I might have said a year ago is no longer true because it's been updated and fixed. So for example, when I uploaded an icon to the store for an application, it used to be that the icon size minimum was 256 by 256, and they reviewed that and they've now made it 480 by 480 as the minimum. And so I uploaded my icon, and then I was somewhat surprised when the store told me, no, that icon's far too small. You need to make a much bigger icon. So yeah, little things like that kind of threw me off a little bit, but yeah, it's good fun.
I just want to make a word salad myself though now. That's the thing.
Well, I hate to do this, but hi, Michael.
Why are you being mean to Vash? Wow.
No, well,
Yes,
I mean, when I say
said, "Hi,
that,
Michael Air."
that's like Pandora's box to say, hi, Michael. How you doing? What have you been up to, Michael?
Well, I'm not sure if I should even answer you now.
Oh. War.
Well, anyway, I've been doing quite a few things. I have a new graphics card coming sometime, probably next week or something. I don't know. And
It didn't get here yet?
Well, technically, it hadn't been shipped yet.
Okay.
But
what shade?
What shade? Oh, the type
green
of
or red.
Oh, it's red.
You have my pity.
Thank you.
He's officially on Team Red.
64.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I still have a 760 right now, so I'm still Team Green technically, but it's a 760. So,
I mean, for all we know, he could be a team. What's the mixture between green and red and put it together in SLI?
Puce? Christmas. Green and red is Christmas.
Right.
Wait, so does that mean that it's the best performance if you get an AMD CPU with an NVIDIA graphics card?
Definitely not. No.
It
works for me.
That sounds like a winning team right there.
I mean, you can do that, but
that's what's in my system right now.
Is the best.
I mean, your graphics performance will probably be better since you have a direct connection from your CPU to your GPU. Just an idea, maybe.
Why would that be a more better connection?
Because since with Intel, it has to go through the chipset. It decreases
No,
your...
I mean, why would AMD and NVIDIA be better than AMD and AMD?
Because NVIDIA is better than AMD when it comes to GPUs.
Wow, I see.
Wow.
Yes.
I love you, man.
let me extend what he said. When it comes to performance, they're better than...
No, it depends on what you're talking about.
When it comes to...
Up until they...
That's definitely not true. AMD's... I mean, Radeon 7's not cheap. AMD is almost always cheaper.
What's that, Wendy?
Point of ray tracing, I would say NVIDIA is better. When you get into the ray tracing where it actually takes the computational power, then AMD is going to step past NVIDIA at that
far.
Yeah. And that's what I'm basing that off of.
But I mean, that doesn't make sense because that's only half of the piece. That the whole point is that you can't really say one is better than the other because they're both better in different things. Like AMD destroys NVIDIA in computational stuff. So like rendering video and stuff like that, AMD massively wins. But gaming with ray tracing, NVIDIA is going to win.
But who cares about ray tracing right now when they can't even have any 4K monitors up for a decent price?
I know we're going to...
4K UHD, mind you. 4K UHD.
Isn't ray tracing based on computational ability?
It's
It
an
is,
it's an extra
and-
additional.
No, it's not. It's actually its own chip.
Hold on. Only one person can talk because people can only hear one person at a time. Otherwise, it's just a big mumble jumble.
I'm raising my hand. I'm raising my hand.
Yes, you may go to the toilet, Thomas.
Okay, first of all,
It's right around the left in the Hanging Gardens.
First of all, Wendy, what were you going to say before about NVIDIA?
Well, there are quite a few of you tonight that your biggest issue with this latest challenge was your graphics cards. So they're a problem.
They're definitely a problem as far as trying out new distros. There's no question about that. NVIDIA is. But for the money and for the performance, there's no better card than NVIDIA. I'm sorry.
Except that AMD might have bad performance in the beginning, but then they continuously bake their drivers better and improving the performance of their graphics cards, so they still, in the long term, could be a better option.
Open source drivers to the win.
Yes, but first of all, NVIDIA does the same thing. They're continually updating their drivers. But
that's not
AMD,
true because they put their stuff into legacy in a reasonable amount of time. AMD takes it really quickly.
Michael, you mentioned that
I didn't defend AMD at all there.
You mentioned that AMD has better computational performance, correct?
Yes.
Than NVIDIA. Okay.
By far.
So while I'm not going to completely disagree with you here, there have actually been benchmarks that have. No, I'm actually going to because when it comes to the RTX series, NVIDIA's computational performance have improved dramatically over current AMD cards. Now, that being said, the Radeon 7 was just released. We don't have a lot of benchmarks for those yet.
We do, and every single one of them says computational beats them every time.
That is totally not.
No,
with the RTX cards, that is not the case because those RTX cards,
it is.
They have to have computational performance in order to do that ray tracing because of how graphically demanding that is. They have to have better performance.
No, it's better performance.
7 cannot do ray tracing, and because of that,
but it's still better performance because the computational is not ray tracing is an addition into the computational on top of the graphics card stuff. Yes, Radeon 7 doesn't have ray tracing, but you don't need ray tracing to do computational performance. You don't need.
This is true.
So Radeon 7 is better than the 2080. It's been and the computational part of it, the gaming part of it. It gets destroyed by the 2080, but the computational part, it does win. And now when you talk about the 2080 Ti, I mean, that just destroys their.
Even watching people do real-time benchmarking for rendering videos, the 2080 rendered faster video than the Radeon 7.
But how much more money?
And when you throw on top of that, the fact that your Radeon 7 right now doesn't support UEFI, that just right there. No,
it does support UEFI.
Why would you?
They already do.
They already updated
it. They fixed it. Okay, then.
Yep.
And they fixed it like a couple weeks ago. Like it was like within 3 days of it, they realized it happened.
Big Pug, go ahead.
Also, I would like to say that we're talking about consumer cards, first of all, not server cards or Quadros. That's the first thing I'll say. Second thing I'll say, a lot of us here don't actually buy NVIDIA cards because of computer gaming performance, but because of an NVENC chip inside, which allows us quicker performance when encoding videos and such. Also, which is basically a lot better than what AMD offers on their site. Also, as far as I remember watching some benchmarks, current RTX cards are better than Radeon 7 in compute.
But some of us can't spend that much money on an RTX card.
That's why I have different levels. So from 2060 or 2050, I don't know which one is the lowest one, to 2080 Ti.
Yeah, the 2080 Ti does not count. Like you can ignore that one completely because it dominates completely and also costs 3 times more money. So that one is definitely going to be. Well, whatever. It's like 1,300, 1,400, something like that.
He's Team Red. He has to exaggerate.
No,
you can get them
it's-
between $1,100 and $1,250 or $1,100 and $1,300. You can get 'em.
Okay, still excessive, ridiculous. So
It
we're not
is
going to count that
ridiculous.
because
Build
there
a
isn't.
system for that.
AMD doesn't have a. Yeah, exactly.
You can.
Your computer will be done for the same price. So like you can't count that in the listing because that's going to win because AMD doesn't have a comparative to that anyway because the Navi doesn't come out until like October. So that one is going to compete with a TI. And when that's done, yeah, we can put that in the argument. But right now it's the 2080 RTX versus the Radeon 7 because they're basically the same price and they're in the same field. Only those two are the ones that are important because they're the ones that compete with each other.
Only word benchmark, like as in comparison, is FPS or a point per dollar. So basically, anything that has, no matter what it is $50 or $100 or $3,000 or $1,000. What matters is how much you get per dollar, not for that specific.
It does matter because we're not comparing a much more powerful card that costs twice that much money. See, I did it right that time.
But the thing is as well, though, if you go to Foreign's website, what Michael is saying is true. There are some tests where AMD is smashing NVIDIA.
Yep.
However, if you look at all of those tests, probably 80% are won by NVIDIA. But he ends up saying the AMD is a better card. How does that work?
Well, because of the percentage where AMD wins is so much higher drastically in the computational part. That's why it's got higher percentage. Like the overall
Also, cost versus benefit.
Sorry, if you
let's
do
not
averages,
interrupt people from talking, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, so if you take out proper averages, you take out the highest and the lowest, and then you do the average. And if you take out the highest and the lowest, NVIDIA smashes it.
Yeah, but that's not a fair comparison because you're taking out you test all these different tests and you just put them all together.
Yeah, but it's not a fair comparison to say just because this one was 30% better than the rest, the whole thing is better. It's better in one area.
Well, it's better than computational stuff because like graphics rendering and computational are basically the only options that there are. So like
but
graphics,
overall,
if you take out the computational part. Yeah, I would agree that if you take out the computational part, NVIDIA wins because gaming is better on NVIDIA. But AMD's open source, so freedom wins. Done.
Yes, but okay. Here's my problem with the AMD card. I love the fact that AMD has come out with this card and they're pushing NVIDIA to be better. Okay, but the problem I have is it's the same old. This is the newest card on the block. It's going to kill NVIDIA. It's going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And when it comes out, it just simply is not. Is it a good card? Yes. Is it beating NVIDIA? Is it smashing NVIDIA? Is it? No, not even close. And that's where I have the problem. It's basically AMD's marketing that I have a problem with rather than their cards.
Alan, don't copy me. Okay, so
Raku.
while I am going to say that I feel like NVIDIA is going to be more powerful, I will say, though, being devil's advocate here, that AMD, because their card was just released recently, their graphics card does have the potential to get more powerful due to BIOS updates and driver updates and things like that. So we have to wait and see. But right now, I'm going to say that, NVIDIA is more powerful. But, if you really like AMD or you need something that you don't want to screw with drivers all day, yes, use AMD by all means. Okay. Because as an NVIDIA user, I'm going to willingly admit that dealing with NVIDIA drivers is a pain.
Michael, you run Ubuntu and it just works.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you want AMD's marketing to say? No, our card's not going to beat that card. Well, I mean, what do you want them to say? That's like, in sports, when you ask a player if they expect to win the game, I mean, you expect them to say, no, we're going to lose? I mean, come on.
No, I don't expect them to. I don't expect them to say they're going to lose, but it's like, I mean, it would be like I don't know how to put an example to it, but it would be like the Bills, who lost 4 Super Bowls, to continually say every year we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. I mean, at some point, you gotta at least put some reality in it and say, yeah, we're going to come out with this card. It's going to be great. But you don't have to. And I guess maybe part of it comes from I would say the AMD fanboys, maybe, that are passionate about AMD.
That's a really good example. It's a bit like VW saying they can do 300 miles to the gallon on their diesel tests, when in reality, what they did was they did like 500 yards, worked out the best MPH, and then just extrapolated that over a full tank. Not factually untrue, but misrepresenting it.
Well, I mean, it's different. The AMD thing is different because you're competing against another product and you don't know until that product comes out, but you're also trying to release at the same time so you can compete. So you have no ability to test it. So you don't have any way to actually know. You're just trying to do your best you can and hoping that what you say is true.
I'm going to ask a very real question because
42.
I have well, it's a great answer, but not the one I'm looking for. If I was to actually have a PC where I could put one of these mammy-jammy video cards in it, and I don't because I live on the low end of everything, how do I get the driver for the new AMD card?
You just install the system and then the kernel gives it to you automatically.
So the driver has to be in the kernel. So to upgrade the driver, do I have to upgrade the kernel, or does all the upgrades come with the firmware?
It comes with the.
I guess that answer might be both there.
Mesa drivers. When you update Mesa and the kernel is when you get the update for the driver.
So you have to update Mesa.
Both of them.
Yes, but also there's the point of that if you want the most performance out of your card, you have to install the latest Mesa drivers and everything else. It's not as simple as, yes, you will have a working driver, but it's not going to perform the same as if you had the Pro drivers installed.
Well, no. The Pro drivers, no.
Let's say that I right now I've got. Now it's very odd because I take care of the NVIDIA and driver installer for MX, even though I don't actually have an NVIDIA card. So it's very strange for me to deal with this stuff. But we download drivers for NVIDIA, DKMS builds kernel modules, and you can update those drivers. Debian actually, for the first time in like a gazillion years, has updated the NVIDIA driver twice in this stretch cycle, which is really strange for them. And one was a major bump in version number. It wasn't just a point bump. But those drivers came down, installed on Debian. I'm assuming that if I needed to update an AMD driver, you're saying that I would need a new kernel altogether and I'm not saying they can't be backported into a kernel and bumped. I'm thinking about LTS releases and things. I mean, are we talking about installing backport stuff and doing all that to get a video driver?
Technically, it depends. Like if your kernel has support, you don't have to update the kernel completely.
Okay.
To get the latest versions, you can update the Mesa drivers. However, if you have a very, very new AMD card, you have to have the latest of both, because like the Radeon 7 does not work unless you have 420 or higher. And if you have 19 Mesa or higher, so you have to have those for those. But if you have like a Vega 64 or Vega 56, then you don't have to have the absolute latest to get even the best performance. But you do need to have a relatively close.
Another reason I ask is, and I see a couple places on the in one of the Telegram groups and also in the various forums here and there, that when certain things update on the system, people are getting these firmware messages that say firmware is missing. For Vega cards, that I'm thinking maybe the driver's in the kernel, it's just the firmware doesn't exist yet. And so in Debian, we get these weird warnings. They're informational. Okay, I off the top of my head, I can't think of one. I want to say Vega 20 or something like that. Maybe these are things in the future that aren't.
The Vega 20 is the Radeon 7. The Vega 20, it's terrible naming system. They all have stupid naming systems.
So does NVIDIA.
Yeah, they're all just ridiculous. So let's go from 10 to 20 for no reason.
And then go back to 1660.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, whatever. So the Radeon 60, the Radeon 7 is on the Vega 20 series. The Vega 20 is just like the whole series, and every new Radeon on that series is also Vega 20, but the Radeon 7 is the first one of that. So the next graphics card will also be a Vega 20 with the Navy, whatever they call it, model. But the Vega 56 and the Vega 64 are not a part of the Vega 20 because reasons. You're welcome. I'm so happy I can make it clear for you.
Yeah, okay.
You were raising your little hand. Did you want to say anything about this?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right.
He's just Deadpool's brother, and he got his hand cut off.
I had to look away because I couldn't look at the screen.
It was good, especially when you started scratching your chin with it.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
So what I will say on my
Go ahead, Michael.
What I will say on the discussion earlier, tying it back to Ubuntu and NVIDIA, I seem to have the best luck with NVIDIA stuff when it comes to Ubuntu. I've not had much luck outside of when I've actually tried to install other distros on my main laptop with the it's an NVIDIA M card, 760M, 765M, something like that. I have not had much luck getting those drivers to cooperate with an external monitor. And Cubicle Nate and I played with OpenSUSE for a little bit, and I've tried it with other things as well, but it's just not been a good experience.
Michael, are you a gamer?
I game occasionally.
So I've actually had a similar problem. I'm using the 415 NVIDIA drivers on Ubuntu 18.04, and I cannot connect to an external display over VGA, or not VGA and HDMI actually. And I have no idea why. I've tried going to the generic kernel, because I don't use generic kernel, and I've tried going to older NVIDIA drivers. And if I go down to 390, let's just say I have issues. I'm not exactly sure what the issues are, but it puts me in a boot loop. Or not a boot loop, a login loop. So I have to stay on the kernel and graphics driver that I have.
Team Green.
Is it, can I just, without wishing to get into a hello, help desk, this is technical support. Are you using a stock Ubuntu kernel, or is it a modified kernel?
It is basically the Zen kernel. It's just prepackaged binary, the quirks kernel.
That's not the same answer.
That's not the answer.
So I did some research.
It's a loose nut between the seat and the keyboard.
Is it the kernel that comes from the repository for which we can know it's known as Ubuntu?
No, it is not the Ubuntu kernel.
I'm going to have to hang up on you now. Bye-bye.
But it's pretty much the same thing.
I'm going to escalate it to the next tier.
Click. Click.
I didn't expect.
Oh, wait. Here they are. They're on the phone now.
I did not.
I like your style.
Might be my kernel. It might honestly be that. But I'm having the same issue, whether it's the official Ubuntu kernel, because I do have that installed. I just don't boot with it usually.
Yeah. Without wishing to be cheeky, if you have a problem with an official Ubuntu kernel and the driver that comes from Ubuntu repositories, then file a bug.
You're right.
File a bug. So, good option. Speaking of good options, unfortunately, Ryan couldn't join us for this conversation, but he is watching and he sent me something to tell Zeb. So I can't join the discussion, but Zeb's math is wrong with Phoronix. Radeon 7 actually beats the NVIDIA 2080 in several games, plus calculations, plus benchmarks in Phoronix test. The reason he comes to 90% is because he is counting each game individual test as a result. Sometimes he runs the games multiple times in different resolutions, and sometimes he doesn't. So if Phoronix tested Tomb Raider in 3 resolutions, the 2080 one in that, he's counting it 3 wins versus 1, even though it's only 1 game.
But it's 3 tests. So out of 21 tests.
But it's the same game. It already beat it the first time. You add an extra relation, it's still going to win.
Number of tests, and out of 21 tests.
But you argued about taking
won 4 times.
I'm talking about taking redundant tests out. So it's the same thing. There you go.
No. You can't take out 15 of the 21 tests because it then sways it in AMD's favor. We are talking about a standard calculation of taking out the best and the worst to get the average.
Yeah, but if you're if 3 of the best are from the same game for the same test, it's a skewed thing because it's redundant testing. Therefore, AMD.
Yeah, but you can't. No, you tell Ryan he can't mix and match. In fact, I'll tell Ryan tomorrow.
Yeah, you tell him, Michael. You
I will.
The message for us because there's no other way for us to communicate with Ryan right now.
Exactly.
James.
I was just going to welcome everybody to the AMD NVIDIA showdown.
I hate this because it just goes on. That's why I was like hesitant about bringing it up.
Hey, Rocco, what Vim or Emacs?
Exactly my point.
Nano.
That's why I hate bringing it up because
Nano. Vim.
Nano.
I like Vim.
VS Code.
Gedit.
EDT
and Guinea.
You're welcome, Rocco.
So we're going to do
Thanks, Michael.
Salient for next week?
We are going to do Salient for next week. That is Silent Robot's distro. It is an Arch-based distro, so if you have any reservations on that, don't do it. If you do, join us for the testing on. All right, it is 9:55. I would love to continue the conversation, but we are out of time. So everybody gets a last word. Seb?
Thanks very much for running this, Rocco. It is really awesome every week. It's the highlight of my week. I really, really enjoy it. And watch, not this week's coming out, but the following week's Destination Linux if you want to see the battle of AMD and NVIDIA and who will win that one. So that'll be good fun.
Well, I know who will really win it. It depends on who will win it in some people's minds. Just saying.
AMD, you're right.
Peter, last word.
So looking forward to trying Silent OS. Ran Arch a few years back, Arch itself plus Manjaro. But it has been a few years, so I'm looking forward to diving back in and testing.
Very nice. Michael?
Yeah, we've got Arch, we've got NVIDIA drivers, and we've got Grub. What could possibly go wrong?
Nothing.
Big Pod, last word.
Thanks for having us, and NVIDIA is better than AMD. No doubt about it.
Team Green, I love it. Wendy, last word. Wendy,
I'm
maybe.
really excited that I made it 2 weeks in a row. Yep, I'm here.
Nice.
You made it 2 weeks in a row. Are you going to make it 3?
I don't know.
Okay.
Really.
Are you going to try Salient?
Probably not.
Okay. All right. Thomas, last word.
All right. So thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I am going to try Salient, and I am going to install it on actual hardware this time.
About
So-
time, Thomas.
I did it with Parrot. Come on. Cut me some slack here. Anyway, check out JargerOS at jargeros.ml.
There you go. Alan.
If you like hearing my voice, then maybe you want to tune into the YouTube channel known as Snapcraft.io, where I blather on for hours about how to package software. If you want to meet me and tell me how my voice sounds like Elvis Presley or whatever, then I'll be at Southern California Expo and Linux Fest Northwest. So if I'm not back on here, then you'll catch me at one of those places. Also,
Very nice.
one final thing, error.show. I'm also on another podcast called User Error, and it's error.
Excellent show.
Oh, thanks.
What is it? What's the
Error, user error. It's a
User
podcast.
Error is what it's called.
Jupiter Broadcasting.
It's us just talking about Linux life and other things.
It's a really good show.
There's a little bit of swearing in it, so if you're not into that, then don't listen, or listen and then write in and tell us you don't like swearing. No, don't do that.
All right, Barb, last word.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody. This has always been fun, and the battle continues between AMD and NVIDIA. And that's about it.
James.
Thanks for having me again. And Alan, I had no idea you had a YouTube channel called Snapcraft.io. So I had no idea. So I'm totally going to subscribe now.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So thanks for having me, guys. And yeah, look forward to next week.
Nice. Colin?
Yes, so I'm definitely going to be checking out Alan's Snapcraft there. I'm very interested to see what he's up to. I didn't even know that either, so it's great to know. The other thing is, get yourself a high-end Intel CPU and live peacefully. See you next week.
Well, I put a link in the YouTube chat for the Snapcraft YouTube
I've got
channel.
that already. Thanks, Rocco.
Dolphin.
Well, I really enjoyed my time with Mageia, even the little puzzles to get the wireless working. But ready to, well, I guess I'm just done. Moving on to the next thing.
There you go. Dave?
Thank you, Rocco and Zeb, for hosting, and thanking you all for putting up with an old grouchy command line curmudgeon.
Paul, last word?
Yeah, I'm going to say Windows 8.1 for the win.
You need to give me band rights.
Listen here,
man, right there.
They have drugs for that now.
TV running.
Rocco, I'm going to need some band rights.
Bits TV is just too advanced. So,
Gotcha, Paul. Hey, look, like I said before, you run whatever works for you. Even if I think you're crazy. You run whatever works for you.
Could be next challenge.
No way. Jonas.
Next challenge.
I caught the show last week. It was fun to pop back in after I don't know how long it's been. The Mageia challenge was fun. Only lasted 3 days before I blew it away and put Gen 2 back on my laptop. But I will not get to try Salient OS because I am retaking my OSCP certification exam next Saturday. So
good luck.
Maybe the week after that. And thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, good luck.
Good luck with that.
Good luck.
All right, Carmine, last word.
Thank you, Rocco, for the great show. Alan, thank you for all of your work. And in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ubuntu rocks.
JJ, last word.
I really appreciate the show, Rocco. And Alan, just subscribe to your YouTube channel and hit the notification bell just in case.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
So check out his stuff as well as the Ubuntu podcast. And also, you know where to find me. And also want to plug that there is a Discord server that we hang out post-show. And after this show is recording, you may get to see my face if you're here.
And how can you get there? BigDaddyLinks.com/Discord. See that? See how that works?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Ritual.
I just want to say thanks again for having me 2 weeks in a row. And I think I expressed it last week, but I look up to quite a few of you guys on the stream. Been doing it for a couple of years, so it's kind of cool getting to hang out with you guys, kind of almost, in real life. And also, I wanted to say I did try out Mageia, and I tried out the GNOME. I tried out KDE, LXQT, and XFCE. So I tried them all out. I had some issues getting KDE and LXQT to go to install on VirtualBox. But outside of that, I mean, they were okay. I don't really have too many complaints about any of them. They're fine distros, or fine DEs anyways for that distro. So anyways, I just want to say thanks again, Rocco. Thank you, Zeb, and good seeing you guys all again this week. Hopefully next week too.
Hopefully next week. I apologize. I must have skipped over you for talking about Mageia, man.
It's all good. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how often I'm gonna want to try some of the distros. So this gave me a good chance to learn VirtualBox. So as far as next week, I will try Salient because it's Arch. And,
yeah.
I dig the Arch. Thanks.
All right, Chris. Last word, brother.
Okay, well, I'm writing Salient out to the media right now to check it out, see if we can get it up and running before I head home. And as far as video cards, I don't care NVIDIA or AMD because my gaming, I'm doing NetHack from the terminal, and that works just fine. And go VMS.
There you go. Michael, last word.
First, I want to say check out the next episode of This Week in Linux comes out tomorrow. And how dare you, Rocco, for scheduling it while I'm recording my show. How did you not know I was going to be 5 hours late to my own show? Come on.
Monopolizing the whole Saturday.
Right? Exactly. That's okay.
So
also, maybe NVIDIA and AMD conversation is too much, and it just never ends, and that's fair. That's because KDE Plasma is the best desktop environment, so at least we can all agree on that one.
Right. I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
So wrong.
Next.
XFCE.
Nate, last word, brother.
All right. Thanks. Sorry I was late. I had family. I couldn't kick him out. I just can't do that. I mean, as much as I like you nerds, I'm not going to kick my family out for you. Sorry.
I'll do it.
And secondly, Michael's right
about everything.
But he knew that. You didn't have to remind him of that.
We
He
don't
already
say
knew that.
we don't say that here, Nate.
Don't be the beast.
and also the AMD latest driver issue has never been a problem for me because I just sudo zipper dup and I'm good to go. So I always have the latest. And then if for more of my nonsense, you can check me out at tuxdigital.com/cubiclenate.
Yep.
Awesome. Frank, last word, brother.
Thank you, Rocco and Zeb. And based on what I've seen tonight, the answer has to be snap install NVIDIA pretty soon, right?
It's replacing apt, so.
Again, Salient OS will be our next distro challenge. If you want to join us through the week and talk about the woes of installing it and all the pain, you can join us on the Telegram, bigdaddylinux.com/Telegram. Thank you for watching, and remember, long live Linux.
Later.
See ya.
Bye.
See you later.
Mahalo.
Live long and prosper. You said I'm a nerd.